It's Tuesday. It is also primary day, plus an amazing panel on MAHA and its impact in the midterm elections. Welcome to the Sean Spicer Show. Let's get into it. All right, guys, today is primary day. We find out finally if Tom Massey will keep his seat. We'll break down all those primary results for you tomorrow. Plus, Andrew Giuliani will be here to talk about his dad and what we're doing to prepare for all these big soccer games. The FIFA tournaments kick off in just a few weeks. And Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin will be here as well. But today, I want to do something really unique. I wanted to talk to several people heavily involved in the MAHA movement about the impact that the MAHA movement is having and what it will mean for the midterm elections. So without further ado, I want to introduce Grace Sessi, the Vice President for Regulatory and Government Affairs at Empower Pharmacy, Jennifer Gagliardi, Senior Policy Analyst for Restoring American Wellness at the Heritage Foundation, and Tiffany Ryder, an emergency medicine physician associate who writes under the title over at signalandnoise.online. Without further ado, let me bring them in. Ladies, welcome to the show. Great to see you all. I'm excited to have this conversation because there's a lot of talk about MAHA, but let's, as we get ready for the midterms, I want to get a check how we're doing. Jennifer, I want to start with you. If you had to grade the progress of the MAHA movement 1 year and 5 months in, give me a grade.
I'm a tough grader, so I don't grade on a curve. I'll let you know that.
I'm not taking Jennifer's class.
Good idea. I would say B+. I mean, you know, you're always going to face headwinds in DC, and we have a lot against us. But I always think there's room for improvement. So I want to make sure that we have some gap there. And we've had a lot of successes. I mean, as we've talked about on our podcast with you, things move very slowly in DC. And I understand the frustrations of the MAHA movement, where some things that were promised, you know, haven't come to fruition, but we're only a year and a half in. So we have some time. I was at an event with Kennedy a couple weekends back on a ranch in Texas. And he said, it's like the big barge. Right. It's like a tugboat moving a big barge. You just have to keep hitting, make these incremental changes. And at one point, there'll be a tipping point and kind of the glacier, the barge will just move. And I think everything will follow. I'm really excited about potentially getting Roger Marshall as the head of the help committee. I think that will change things. So I think there's room for improvement, but I overall think we've made great progress. And I'd love to hear what the other ladies think as well. From their
it's funny you brought up Roger Marshall. Obviously, for those who didn't catch the reference, because I didn't at first. I was like, "What?" Bill Cassidy loses his seat in the Senate, head of the Help Committee, which is critical to the MAHA agenda. You're replacing him with a much more friendly voice in Roger Marshall. All right, we know what Jennifer's grading system is like. Tiffany, how's your class going to be? Am I looking to sign up for this? Give me a grade.
Well, I think you would much prefer to take my class only because I'm a hopeless optimist and I'm an easy grader. But I don't know. You know, it is hard. I understand Jennifer's framing for sure with, you know, people really are disappointed. I think people who aren't as familiar with the way that DC works are hoping for just everything we've always wanted to happen immediately. And I think we all want that secretly in our hearts. But you know, I think we've had some real concrete wins. I think things like the 18 states that have stopped giving, you know, stopped using SNAP benefits to buy soda and candy, things like that will really move the needle. But I think as a clinician, for me, the biggest win is more of a soft win. It's that we're now allowed to ask questions that 5 years ago I would have lost my medical license for asking. And I think that has a trickle-down effect that we haven't fully realized yet. But the fact that, you know, we had an FDA commissioner come out and say, actually, medical dogma is pervasive and wrong, and gave us plenty of examples of that. And we're starting to be allowed to question the way things have always been done. And I think that's going to be an essential step to next steps and moving forward.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that the transparency has been huge. The ability to finally get back to asking frank, normal questions. Grace, give me your, first of all, actually, I'm not going to let Tiffany off the hook yet. I didn't hear a grade out of you.
I mean, I would give like an A minus.
Okay. All right.
She stole my grade.
No,
Sorry.
but well, that's the grade. I want to hear the rationale.
Somewhere.
All right, Grace, give me a. But are you giving it for the same reasons, or do you have different rationale for your grade?
I'm in between both of their perspectives. I would say I agree with both. Like I'm a tough grader as well, but I do love the MAHA movement and what they're doing. Make America healthy again is great. But I'm also in the same boat with Jennifer in the sense as I want to see results. I think that their intent is there. They're trying to do great things. And they're moving the needle, but maybe for others in the public, it's not fast enough. They want to see it fruition. And that's really what we're looking is getting things across the line so that the Americans can have access to what they really want to see from the MAHA, which was promised to them. So I wanted to say A minus. I thought you were going to give a grade of an A, and I was like, I'm in between. But yeah, I think a B plus A minus is a fair grade because the intent is there. They're trying. They are going to move things, but we just want it as Americans quicker and transparency. But I do agree that there's things that we're doing now that would have been like taboo 5 years ago. So excited to what's to come. We just want it quicker.
What about the personalities? Go ahead. Go ahead, Jennifer. Go ahead.
Yeah. And Tiffany said it's more of the soft one, and I agree with this. I think for me, one of the things I said straight away is I want someone who walks the talk, right? So you compare what our health administration looked like 5 years ago, and you had Assistant Secretary Brian. We have Brian Christine now, and last time we didn't know if it was a man or a woman. Like these changes, and messaging is huge. I was interviewed for an article on this, and of course, I was the only kind of dissenting voice. It was Roll Call. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that outlet. I don't even know where
Capitol Hill newspaper. Capitol Hill newspaper.
Okay. I don't know if it's God bias or not, but I read the article and I was the only one saying like they were coming out as if the social media things and all the celeb was actually not serious, right? If this made him look less serious, that it was all just based on his personal health choices and less on science. And I said, well, messaging is key. It's key to inspire people to make these choices, because if we keep relying on the government to make these changes, like both of the ladies have said, we're not going to get very far. We have to inspire consumers to make different choices to create a demand that will change the supply side in a way, right? There's things we can tweak in policy, I think, particularly in the healthcare market with health savings accounts moving more to freedom of choice. But that messaging of like, the Pete and Bobby challenge and the Oz walk, when they all started, I mean, was it corny a little bit? Sure, but it inspired my whole team to do a walk day at Heritage and we'll go, take a break in the middle of our day and have an hour and a half. Like our culture inside our company has changed. And I think that demand is really important. So the messaging, like Tiffany said, it's a soft win, but I think it's a big win.
What about the people, guys? Who do you think is like the superstar? I mean, obviously RFK comes to mind, but is there anybody that you guys think like, hey, there's an unsung hero in the MAHA movement, whether it's in government or not? Who is there anyone that you guys think gets a lot of the credit for this that maybe isn't top of mind?
I mean, I love RFK Jr. just because, he's talking about peptides. And I think that to me is like so exciting, right? Like, again, it's things that we never talked about before that we're talking about now. And I think that we need to focus on what the people want. People want to see progression with the healthcare. They want to make their own choices. They're sick of individuals telling them what to do with their bodies or, what medications they can or can't take or what they can't afford. So for me, he's really pushing that. I know that's like top of the line for everyone, but to me that he's always on top of mind because he's challenging status quo. And I think that he is going to be able to move the needle with that.
I think it's unsung, but they are the big drivers, the MAHA moms. Like you just can't ignore the power the political power that they wielded in the past year, whether it was the trying to get a glyphosate liability shield through. They blocked that with a lot of political pressure. We primaried, like you mentioned, Bill Cassidy. I mean, there's a lot of power in upset moms. I don't want to say angry. I think they're, just frustrated.
I gotta be honest, to me, outside of Bobby, and I agree with you 100%, Grace, like he's the obvious choice. I actually been really pleased with Dr. Oz. Like he has been out front leading on a lot of issues, and CMS, which is Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, normally wouldn't get the attention, but he's really shown us how much that matters, how much you can, these big government programs can affect the agenda.
Yeah, and I've got to give a shout out to Brooke Rollins. I was uncomfortable when RFK moved into HHS secretary as opposed to being just a MAHA czar or, in a more global position because I didn't know if he was going to get bogged down with ag. And Brooke Rollins and he have made this amazing partnership, and they seem to be walking in lockstep for the most part. And she's been more of an advocate than I expected for MAHA.
So can I? That's a really interesting thing, because the funny part about MAHA is that I think the traditional view is that it's taking on big pharma, but there's big pharma, big food, and big ag, right? And I think we've made strides in all three. And each of you have touched on this, but like I think when you keep this movement in context, it's not just taking on big pharma. It's really talking about wellness and what's in our food. And I think the transparency aspect of this has the idea of now flipping over, a protein bar and saying, what's in this? Can I pronounce these ingredients? Is something that, at least to me, is new.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing to remember is like people that have been kind of like the three of us, have probably been doing that for a decade. So it seems old hat and common sense to us, but it's not to a lot of people. Like you said, Sean, like you were telling that story of like flipping over you thought the protein bar was great because it had this much fat, this much protein, and this much carbs, and it's a diet zone bar. And you flip it over, you're like, this is really not much better than a Snickers bar. So I'd rather have the candy if I'm going to do that. But the messaging of real food, I think is huge. Just that simple slogan of eat real food. The critics are coming out and saying, well, he didn't do anything different than Michelle Obama. Yeah, he did. He had better messaging. Again, he had a better campaign and something that, and maybe just the timing was right as well. I'll give it that, right? A lot of it is timing. But the messaging is just great. The graphic design of this new pyramid, no matter how much we wanted to switch from like the pyramid to the My Plate, that pyramid is singed in everybody's brain. I don't think it ever going to, so it was smart to not change that, to work with that and, like South Park said 5 years ago, turn the pyramid upside down. The harbingers of truth.
South Park never hurts marketing.
It was honestly, like I was like, how did they know? That was crazy. They were like, maybe we just turned it upside.
How do they know is the question. How do they know? There's so much out there. But I think you said it earlier, like we've been doing that. I think as the three of us, like it's something that we've always done. But I would call this era the awakening of the Americans, is that everyone now is asking questions like, what am I putting in my body? And I think that's what this administration has recently done, is eye-open a lot of individuals to, I was just eating it because I was told to do it, right? Because I trusted the government. They told me to do this. I trusted the industry, the commercials, all that. And now people are asking questions. And I would say, this administration took it from a 50 to 100, but COVID really changed that of, the messaging. But the administration is really making an impact of asking questions, of not just whatever you're being told you're going to do. And that's what Americans are now doing. I lived a lot overseas. So that to us is like just natural. Like we don't eat processed food. You want meat, you go get it from the butcher, he cuts it up, you go grind it at home. There's nothing that's processed. The vegetables are not sprayed. It's not overconsumption, right? That is also the big thing with the Americans, is the overconsumption of fast. But I think that is slowly being changed with this administration, which is why I admire it.
I do want to push back. I think it's it's easy to compare to Europe, and I think where it's helpful is kind of maybe the vaccine standards and the food safety standards. We have such a large country, so the food distribution system has to be so different. We don't have walkable cities as much as Europe does. It's a different kind of climate. It's a different climate of how people get food. Yes, we've definitely, I love what you said. Sometimes I think a problem is just portion size. I mean, you go to Cheesecake Factory and one meal can feed like 4 people and you have one person eating it with no take home or leftovers. But there's more challenges in this country. You have so many different climates. The one thing is you are telling people to eat healthier. Well, how are we going to get fruit to Montana in the middle of winter? How are we going to get vegetables? So preservation in this whole, I went down a rabbit hole recently with kind of a peel in this post-harvest industry that is not looked at of how we get healthy food. So that's a big challenge. And that's why I maybe gave it a B+, because we have to figure out now that people are demanding it, how do we get it to people?
Yeah, Jennifer, that's such a good point. I mean, it's like something that we don't talk about all the time, right? We don't think about. We think, oh, well, Germany has this figured out. Let's just do that, and it's just not that simple.
All right. Well, Tiffany, here's the thing. You're a medical professional, and one of the things that we've all said is this notion of asking questions. When I was a kid growing up, in fact, it was encouraged. You'd go see a doctor and say, "Well, you should go get a second opinion." The idea was, hey, that's part of the process. In the last decade plus, maybe, the idea of challenging the medical orthodoxy was in fact, it would get you banned and censored. What do you mean you're asking me? And then we start to find out that, with all due respect, I started to ask questions of my doctor about nutrition. I say, how many nutrition classes did you ever take? Well, none. And the answer to everything, I believe, seems to be a pill, which is whatever's ailing you, we can write you a prescription for that. And I think in some cases that's the right answer. But I don't think we're ever at, as Kamala Harris learned on the border, we never get at the root cause. So why do you have, diabetes? Why is your cholesterol high? As opposed to just take this pill, which again, may be the right thing in the short term. But we're now trying to get people back to a state of healthiness by asking questions. What's your diet look like? What's your exercise? And I think we've approached things, and the government now, instead of just mandating it, it's saying, giving us a lot more transparency in terms of what we're eating and what the approach is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that is really the key. I think Jennifer said it earlier. Government is not coming to save us. There are things that government can do to support our cultural change and our personal change, but really this is going to happen in the home. And when I look at, this white coat culture of doctors and clinicians who spent decades just doing the best they can and never being questioned about what the recommendations were and how that's changed just in the past 5 years. It's really, I think it's hopeful. I think that I want to be careful about the way that I frame it, because I don't think that your doctor is not lazy. Your doctor is not unwilling to give you nutrition advice. A lot of times doctors don't know. Most clinicians are operating in a 7-minute visit window, and they want to help.
That's a lot. It's not even that. I don't know. It's 7 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, and think about all the charting you have to do. And so, I think it's really working from multiple fronts. We need our patients to come to us and make it a priority in the visit. Hey, my, blood pressure is high. I understand and I appreciate that you're willing to give me this medication, but is there something that I could be doing on my end that would help? Do we know why it changed all of a sudden? And that gives clinicians the permission to have that conversation and the incentive. And I just think that, the more that we do that and the more that we are allowed to question, I don't think that people have really any idea how often we go into an appointment and we are thinking, how can I not get sued? How can I not have my license taken away by the medical board for saying something that isn't allowed, even though the science supports something else? How do I not get fired by my hospital for not doing something that I think is wrong? And is not in alignment with the science. And so there's really a lot going on in those appointments. And I think that patients really do have a lot of power to just ask more questions and just be involved. And that puts a little more pressure on us too, to learn the new science and look at the back of the protein bar and see if we're recommending, basically a can of seed oil, or if what we're recommending is actually in alignment with what we know to be good for you.
I mean, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
Go ahead.
She nailed a lot of very valid points. I'm a pharmacist, so I worked in a retail setting for 2 years when I first graduated, but I commuted from Canada where my family lives. So I would cross the border and work in the States. And it was mind-boggling, the amount of prescriptions that I would see. Not that I want to go down the opiate discussion here, but the amount of oxycodone prescriptions for first time, I had back pain or a headache or whatever, compared to what I would see in Canada. And what I learned is that pharmacists were scared to ask questions until, we started having those challenging discussions with physicians. How dare, if I was to call and ask, hey, why is this dose written? It would be like, who are you to challenge what I wrote? And really what we're trying to develop is corresponding responsibility. Just because we have our own license to protect, and just because a doctor wrote it doesn't mean that we need to fill it. We should be having those discussions to ask the right questions. Is this the right medication? Is this the right dose for the medication? And are we just writing a script to write a script to get things moving within 7 minutes? That's why I laugh at 7 minutes, because I feel like it's even less than that they have one-on-one with the patients. And they're just pumping out scripts and people are getting addicted. But it's not just controlled substances. It's many different factors when it comes to diabetes, right? We could talk about, have they ensured that they're on the right diet, the right exercise, all those discussions. But I would say, yes, it's not just physicians. We all need to do better with challenging those and having tough conversations. But there is different pressures coming from, right, the margins, the hospitals you're working at, just the society in general. Even the patient would be like, well, my doctor wrote it, why aren't you filling it? And I think that's slowly being shifted towards the right of, we're all just trying to do the right thing for the patient, and patients should have choices. But is it the right choice for you? And do you have the right educational system around you?
That's
you
fascinating.
You said a lot about like personal, is it the right choice for you? Because one drug, nothing is a one size fits all. And the doctor is there to guide choices, right? He's not there to tell. Like, it's the same thing. Like, you're hiring them. You have the right to say, like you said, Sean, I'm going to go try. I'm not so sure about what you said. I'm going to get a second opinion. The interesting thing is kind of the pushback. I mentioned this article because there's this one line in the article that one of the critics said, of Kennedy, he's saying, like, why can't you be more like me? This line cracked me up. Part of that is that it then puts the responsibility back on the consumer, as if that's a bad thing. Like, that's how the experts think. That no, you can't take responsibility. We're the experts. That one line, that says it all right there. It puts the responsibility back on the consumer, and we can't have that.
The thing that's so fascinating about this discussion is one of the biggest things. We talked about the difference between Michelle Obama's approach, frankly, and the approach of the MAHA movement is, I think Michelle Obama, frankly, was like a nanny state. It was, here's what you must do, right? Government will tell you what to do. I think what I've enjoyed about the MAHA movement is it's, in the case that I threw out there of the protein bar, it's not saying don't eat it or we're going to ban it. It's saying we want you to know what's in it. If you still want to go ahead and eat that protein bar, that's your decision as a consumer. But it's not, we're going to make sure you know what's in it. And that's where I think we've done a great service to the American people in this whole, like, whether it's forever chemicals, red dyes, all of these ultra processed foods, right? The idea is now I can go, wait, I don't want to be eating that. I don't want to put that in my body. Or if I don't care, or maybe, you don't have the money's an issue, whatever it is. But I think we've allowed consumers to make much more informed decisions in the last year than they ever have.
And where I think policy can support that is now we have to make sure that these companies can't override the decisions that consumers are making through crony capitalism, through this kind of meshing of the bureaucratic state and corporate control. That's what you mentioned, Sean, earlier, big ag, big food, because they will try to subvert consumer demand. They will try to, get their SNAP benefits to pay for soda and candy. And those are like, what are the policy? We want to align proper incentives for the producers in the marketplace. Right now, we don't have a free marketplace, particularly in ag. You've got 4 top producers and like the butchers, they're all vertically integrated, right? So it pushes smaller people out of business. They can't compete. Farming, there's so many of these misaligned incentives and kind of industrial capture of our bureaucracy. That's where we really need policy to do some work.
But we see that not just with food, we see that with pharma right now, right? There's so many lobbying with pharma, and really what they're trying to do is push out like compounders, and that's individualized medicine. People should have choices of what medicine they want to inject in their body and how much, and if there's any allergies, et cetera, personalized medicine. And that's the policies that we see as an industry being challenged too. So it's not just food, I would say, it's medicine as well.
Grace, can you just talk about that for 1 second? The big pharma would tries to scare people to say, if you're compounding, that's probably something from China. You don't know what's in it. And yet, the more I've gone down this rabbit trail, I've found that, in fact, these pharmacies are regulated. They're based in America, but just sort of big pharma wants you to believe that anything that isn't from a labeled big pharma thing is dangerous. Walk us through what the reality is in the compounding world.
The reality is that we're being hit on every angle because pharma is trying to control everything. By the way, pharma has been controlling everything for a long time. But I would like to educate the American public is pharmacy started as compounders. That's how pharmacy really started, with brick and mortar. We made medicine from scratch in the United States. And then through evolution is then we got into manufacturing and making these drugs overseas. This all started, I would say, because of GLP-1s. You know, when you start hitting people's pocketbooks, they start, wanting to advocate for many different things. But now compounding is not safe because of GLPs. But again, compounding has always been in the industry for centuries. And this is how original medicine started. And also it's highly regulated. I would say there's two separate. There's a 503A and then a 503B pharmacy. The 503A pharmacy is patient specific. It's for many different patients, pediatric that can't swallow, dosage forms, allergy. It's very, I would say, individualized for that patient. 503B pharmacy, which is, by the way, it's regulated through states boards of pharmacy and a little bit of FDA as well. 503B, it's, outsourcing facilities. You're dealing with clinics, hospitalized, more bulk medications, and it's highly regulated through FDA and CGMP. But again, the notion of big, scary pharma, the narrative is, compounding is not safe. It's always been safe. That's how pharmacy started.
Yeah, it's definitely got a bad rap. I want to ask you guys this, because let's get to the politics of this. There's a lot of questions about whether or not Republicans should embrace the MAHA movement as an issue going into the midterms. I don't know. I mean, I'll just save my opinion for later because I want to get you guys to weigh in. But Tiffany, I mean, Jennifer mentioned the MAHA moms being such a driving force. If you were talking to a group of campaign operatives right now or members of Congress from the Hill who said, gosh, I don't know how much to lean into MAHA during my reelection campaign, what advice would you give them?
I would say lean all the way in. I mean, but I'm biased, of course, right? So, I mean, my guilty knowledge is I hear a lot of conversations with staffers, congressional staffers, with people who regularly meet with members of Congress, and the feedback that I've heard is really that congressional staffers are insatiably curious. They want to know more about what MAHA is recommending for different things, because like we talked about, it's a huge portfolio, right? It doesn't just encompass pharma. It encompasses insurance and CMS changes and ag and all of these things. And so, congressional staff is very curious. I think members of Congress are very nervous because there is comfort and safety, or perceived safety, in just maintaining the status quo. It's really scary to be the person who goes out on a limb and does something different. But I think what we saw with Cassidy's race that just happened this week is that it does make a huge difference. Brownstone Institute, and I meant to pull up the stats to refresh my memory, but didn't. But there was an overwhelming support. They just did a poll. There was an overwhelming support for medical freedom on both sides of the aisle. I think that MAHA represents the persuadable middle. I think it's a huge opportunity. I think it's something that is morally and ethically worth leaning into. And I hope that is the direction that we'll move. And I think it is. I think it is the movement that's happening.
Sean, because Tiffany brought up moral and ethically, I'd like to maybe address a little bit on that philosophical principle, because the way I see it, particularly in the past 10 to 20 years, couple decades, is that the progressive movement, the ideology is such that we can control everything. A man can become a woman. I mean, sorry, I keep harping on this trans thing, but it really tells you a lot about their way of thinking, right? We can overcome human nature. We are smarter than God. We can do anything we want. We can make a man have a baby. We can put a baby in a tube and make it. We can have two men have a baby, right? They're constantly trying to override human nature and the limitations of human nature. You're limitless. Self-empowerment, right? They're all about this self and this enlightened self and this fully actualized self. Conservatives do tend to be more religious and understand, like, we're a little more humble. We don't have control of everything. We're not going to try to control Mother Nature or human nature. We are going to work within the constraints of it for human flourishing. We are going to try to, make conditions most favorable for all humans to thrive. However, people are still going to die, right? That we saw that during COVID, that philosophy, 0 deaths, no deaths from COVID. That's ridiculous. There's no deaths from jaywalking. There's no deaths from getting in your car. There's no deaths from eating salad. Like, there's always this small percentage. You take a risk with everything you do. Something might happen with, it's about personal sovereignty. And if the MAHA people, what frustrates me a little bit is like, well, if you don't do it, we're going to take it to the left. They're not going to take it in the good direction. I think it can only be with more conservative principles that the MAHA agenda, I think it's only aligned with conservative principles.
And they don't stop, right? Like, they keep pushing the limit, pushing.
What's the next thing?
Yeah. Yep. Like, I'm a mom of 2 teenagers. And so for me, that is a scary thing, is I have to reinforce, God and what is, natural versus unnatural. And so that's to me is the constant pushing and desensitizing what is normal is what's scary. And I think that's where the movement is with the MAGA moms is, what do we want to see for the future of our kids? Okay, yeah, how we grew up, family values, what did God put us on earth for, all that. So I think, yes, it's technology and evolution is great, but we need to also make sure the foundations of what is right and wrong and what is, evil versus good is a reminder. And I think that's where they have a really good head lead, I would say, in the essence.
But getting back to brass tacks on this, if I can, I want to ask you guys a question. Like, when you talk about the MAHA movement, because I come at it from a purely mathematical political standpoint, which is this an additive movement or not? And almost to a T, every person who is active in MAHA says, I really wasn't that politically engaged. If I did, maybe I was on the left. And so I guess my point is that I see this as a extremely smart and healthy and additive piece. If you're campaigning right now, you're bringing people into the process that might not have otherwise been engaged on an issue that's very personal to them. And as Grace said, about their kids or their own well-being. And I think that's where I think the political establishment needs to get the message that this is something that's engaging people, activating them in a way that most other issues would never get them the same, activation.
And I think you see this in particularly maybe more traditional blue areas, right? Where you had that kind of maybe squishy middle, like Tiffany talked about, that because of the vaccination schedule, because of the school lockdowns that were so ridiculous, it's kind of like the same Spencer Pratt thing. It's gotten so ridiculous, they're willing to vote for a reality star, which we did in 2016, right? Same kind of thing. Like, we were tired of politics, same old, same old. So I think the candidates that can kind of say, I'm actually not a typical politician and lean into some of these MAHA issues, I agree with you. It is additive. I was saying that kind of like 4 years ago. If you talk about these health issues, people will vote on them. Particularly, like you said, Sean, the ones that normally wouldn't go out and vote.
And his name is not Spencer Pratt. It's the Prince of Bel-Air. I don't know if you saw that.
I saw that. Grace, it was great. That was the news.
It was genius. He got my attention.
Pulling this out.
again, I think like he's being relatable. He's hitting home. He's talking to the people on the other side of the screen that are going to vote, and he's being relatable to them of what matters to them. I think that's what MAHA is doing, right? They're being relatable to the issues that are being impacted in your home, and how do you get that vote? So I love his campaign. I'm not going to lie. And I love reality TV. And so, I mean, I watched him when he was like nothing, like causing chaos on TV, to now doing this. So I am proud of him. But again, I think that's another thing about America. You can go from being a reality star TV to now being a mayor of LA. So God bless. I hope he wins because he's talking to the people. But
maybe
here we
he's
are
listening to this podcast, and once hopefully if he makes it into the final, however they run it, I think they run it like the governor, right? It's a open primary. He can maybe move away from, he can move on to other issues other than just the fire.
Yes.
And the needles and the hypodermic needles and the poop.
Yes, of course.
And maybe he can lean into some of these MAHA things, because I actually think it would help him.
Agree.
So to go back to your point, Sean, about the about if this is a net win or a net loss, like Jennifer said, like multiple times, like brought up this gender ideology. And I think that for, we'll say, an RFK Jr. Democrat, right? For this group of people who were primarily, maybe they voted on the left because they were concerned about the environment or about big pharma or industry, they looked at this, gender ideology. I hear from people all the time, and they're like, the Democratic Party left me, and now where do I go? And I think that MAHA provides a cushy landing for those people that says your values really matter to us, and here's what conservatism really is, not what you read it was in the New York Times. And I think it's like such a great opportunity for us in this moment, in this time.
Sean, I want to ask you, because you're more familiar with traditional Republican politics, right? I came from the left, right? So I was one of these like environmental, I was like a hippie living in the canyons.
Yeah. Tell us more.
Yeah.
What did it for you? Help us understand so we can,
It was COVID. It was a lot of things. It was a return to Christianity. It was COVID. It was starting to use my brain again by going back to grad school. I like to say I turned it off for about 20 years because you kind of have to in LA. You don't want to seem too smart. Not the way to get ahead out there. But Sean, I think this brings up the point too of the whole change in the Republican Party, right? And I think you can speak to that because you've been at this for so long, this kind of neocon, everything based in the free market. It doesn't matter who gets trampled on. That's why I was a lefty, is like, you can't let these corporations operate without transparency, without accountability. And we see that shift, I think, overall on the right. Maybe it's not even called, I guess it's called Republican, but we're populism. I'm curious as to your point of view, where MAHA fits in that overall shift, and can we capitalize on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is part of what Trump is all about, Trump 2.0 in particular. I mean, the largest chapter in my book is on MAHA, because I do believe it is unbelievably transformational. I always, like I've said to you guys, and I've said it in speeches, like, I look at myself as the typical person, and Grace touched on this. Well, the government told me, the doctor told me, I trusted those agents. And then suddenly I'm like, well, wait a second, I can't pronounce that ingredient. How can that be that good for me? And then you start to figure out that like red dye has a problem. There's now a study out the other day that aspartame, think about it. We were told to drink Diet Coke because it was less calories. And now there's a potential that
victim.
Yeah, right. But that's the Grace. See, that's the thing, is that it truly is like victim. Like I thought, okay, I like Coke,
but I'm still doing it. It's my only drug of choice, Sean. Let me be. I don't do anything else.
I think the president would join you in this. But again, why do we drink Diet Coke? I mean, and it just depends on, like, I grew up when it got launched, right? And I remember being like, oh, it's got less calories. And then you start to hear about some of these ingredients and you go, wow, wait a second. Yes, less calories. But I'll give you another fun example that I give to people all the time. In case you are listening to the audio version, you may not see how white my skin is. And, when I go to the dermatologist like every week, and at one point I said to the dermatologist, like, I don't know, 9 months ago, they'd always said every day, wake up, put sunscreen on, put a moisturizer with sunscreen, right? And I thought, okay, good, I'm doing. So I finally said to the dermatologist, Hey, I got to ask you a question. I keep reading in some of this MAHA material that like some of the ingredients in everyday sunscreen might not be good for you. And she's like, "Oh, that's true." And I'm like, "What?"
At
I'm
least
like,
she
"I
was
thought I was
honest.
wearing this." And now you tell me she's like, "Oh yeah, you got to be careful in some of this stuff." And I'm like, that's
Yeah.
not where did that enter the dialogue? And that's the thing that I think, to your whole point, Jennifer, is I don't think it shouldn't be a political issue, to be honest with you. This should be a government issue protecting the people. It's become partisan, and I think Republicans should ride the wave. I do want to touch on one more thing, though, that I think, because I've got three MAHA women here. One of the things that popped out the other day is RFK and Dr. Oz launched this thing called moms.gov. And Dr. Oz used a term that I thought was fascinating. He said 1 out of every 3 American women are underbabied, that they're either childless or having fewer kids than they want, and because our fertility rates are crashing. And again, one of the things that Bobby Kennedy said is, instead of just ignoring this, maybe we should actually figure out why. And here was Bobby in the Oval Office. Take a look.
I just wanted to stress what a huge win for the MAHA movement and for the pro-life movement moms.gov is. It is one-stop shopping for IVF, for prenatal care, for postnatal care, for nutrition, for baby formula, and of course for Trump RX. We have, as Dr. Oz pointed out, a fertility crisis in this country right now. We just found out that we've dropped now to 1.57%. The replacement rate is 2.1. 100 years ago, we were at 3.27, so more than double than we are today. We are approaching the cataclysmic rates that Japan and China are now experiencing that is threatening their economy. It's a threat not only to our economy, to our national security, it's a direct threat to our Social Security Trust Fund, to the Medicare Trust Fund. President Trump has directed my agency to find out the cause of the fertility crisis, and that is part of this program. We're looking at the impact of metabolic challenges, which directly affect fertility, of obesity, which affects fertility, of endocrine disruptors, of pesticides, of this toxic soup that our young women are walking around today to try to figure it out. The fertility crisis for women began in 2007. For men in 1970, men had twice the sperm count as our teenagers do today. This is an existential crisis for our country.
All right, you get the gist here, but I want real quick, how big of a threat do you think this is, and how big of a campaign issue should this become?
I think it's huge. I mean, I was listening to a priest that was saying, if you don't think this is a problem from a Christian point of view, like no babies, you're delusional. Like he said, there's economic ramifications, but you're talking about the end of humankind. And I do think it's multifactorial. There are definitely medical reasons that women that want to can't have babies. We have a whole restorative reproductive medicine coalition that we're building to try to get to root cause instead of IVF, not as the first resort, that IVF doesn't become the first resort, but also women are being told that babies are a burden. I mean, the feminist movement has, and I've written a lot about this. I've taken a lot of heat, as you can imagine, online, because you can criticize a lot of things. You can criticize pharmaceutical companies. You cannot criticize feminism, and you cannot say women, should be held up to similar virtues as men. You want to, complain about men all the time, and you don't hold yourself up to any kind of standards. And they're being told that it's more fulfilling to go after a high-paying career. And I'm not saying everybody has children.
Right. Yeah.
I don't have children, but I still recognize the primacy of motherhood and the inherent dignity of being a woman. That's what shocks me. It's almost anti-woman what's happening. So I'm happy for the website.
It is.
Messaging is amazing.
Moms.gov.
Moms front and center.
Yeah.
Well,
I think you can do both, right? Like that image of America, like you can have to choose career versus kids. It's not true. You could do it both. And we need to really bring back that. I mean, I'm born and raised Catholic, so I support all of it.
All right. Well, guys, I really appreciate you being here. This is a conversation. I hope we can follow it up just to see how this movement's playing as we get towards the midterm. Thank you all for being with us. Tomorrow, as I said, a great update. We'll have primary results for you. Plus, Senator Ron Johnson gives us an update on what's going on in the Senate. And Andrew Giuliani gives us an update on his dad and what's going on as we prepare for FIFA this year. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you back here tomorrow on The Sean Spicer Show.